morning, ladies, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are doing really well. So today's video is going to be about afternoon tea and how to do it properly. What prompted me to do this video is I was invited to an afternoon tea that is going to be in the latter part of this month. So I did some research on afternoon tea because I actually want to do it properly. So I wanted to share some of the information that I've learned about afternoon tea. Hopefully this will be helpful to you if you have an afternoon tea event to attend in the future, or even if you just want to know the history of afternoon tea, then I think this video will be interesting for you. Now, if you are just landing on my channel for the very first time, my name is Teresa, and this channel is all about leveling up and becoming more elegant and more graceful. And if you're interested in that, please go ahead, subscribe to the channel, and join our community of women that are becoming more elegant and more graceful. Now, without further delay, let's jump straight into today's video. Good morning, ladies, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are doing really well. So in today's video, we are going to be discussing afternoon tea. The reason I wanted to do this video is because I have been invited to attend an afternoon tea that is later this month. I did a little research on the appropriate attire and so on and so forth for afternoon tea. Now, I have actually done an afternoon tea myself at the Ritz-Carlton, and I took my daughter, and I also invited about 6 of my friends. But however, after researching afternoon tea, I kind of see some of the mistakes that I actually made when I did my own private afternoon tea at the Ritz-Carlton. Before we dive into today's video, I hope you can see my flowers that are to the right of me here. Now, I love, as I have mentioned in many of my previous videos, getting my fresh flowers from the farmer's market. So last weekend, I went to the farmer's market and there was this little stand, and she had some of the most beautiful florals that I really love. So I asked her to put together an arrangement of flowers for me, and she did such a beautiful job. She even wrapped them in a biodegradable paper and put a bow around them. And actually the bow is my favorite color, which is this olive green, and I just love them. So if you are interested in getting some really beautiful flowers, don't forget to check out your farmer's market, because in my personal opinion, the farmer's market is the best place to get the most beautiful flowers that you will ever see. Okay, ladies, so welcome back. Now, before we get into these tips on how to properly do afternoon tea, I wanted to share this with you, which is so amazing, because I picked up this little book called The Ritz London Book of Afternoon Tea. And I picked this up just haphazardly while I was in London. And I didn't know that once I got back home that I was going to be invited to an afternoon tea. Now, how about bringing something to fruition? This book gives you the history of afternoon tea. So before we get into the tips of how to do afternoon tea properly, I wanted to just share this little excerpt with you ladies on the history of afternoon tea. And also, look at how beautiful my invitation is. So I have a seat at the table for afternoon tea. So the history of afternoon tea begins with the Chinese. The Chinese were drinking evening tea even on the misty borders of recorded time. They kept their pleasure close. The first taste of tea allowed to Europe did not come until the middle of the 16th century, when Portugal managed to establish a trading center at Macau, sending home a few pounds of the precious herb now and then. And once tea reached Europe, it was tremendously expensive, the beverage of monarchs and aristocrats alone. Tea first reached England's shores during the years of Cromwell's protectorate during 1653 and 1658. So actually, tea began in China, and then it reached the English shores in 1653 to 1658. And I can tell you that after being in London, that afternoon tea is a thing. And most of the Londoners do actually participate in afternoon tea. So that was just a little history on how afternoon tea began. Now, when it comes to an afternoon tea, let's talk about the dress code. So the dress code for afternoon tea is typically a woman will wear either a dress or a skirt, a hat, and some gloves. Anything that is not too casual, and you want to make sure that you avoid anything that is denim or anything that just appears to be way too casual. And I would recommend sticking with something that is more along the lines of an office attire, but a little bit more classy. And it also depends on where the afternoon tea is being held, because if it's gonna be held somewhere like the Ritz-Carlton, you definitely want to do something like a dress, a skirt, maybe a hat, and some gloves. And also you want to dress appropriately for the time of the year. After I got my invitation, I kept thinking, what am I going to wear? And I realized that I had this dress right here in my closet, and also that it is autumn. So let me give you a full look at this dress and also the shoes that I'm going to be wearing with this dress to the afternoon tea. Now, one of the things that I haven't chosen yet, and here is where you ladies can help me, I have yet to choose a handbag. And I am wondering whether or not should I take something along the lines of a burgundy handbag to match with my shoes, or should I go with something black? So please give me your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would really appreciate it. Now let me show you what I'm going to be wearing to afternoon tea. Now what I'm going to wear to afternoon tea begins with my beautiful pearl necklace that is from Monica Venator. I teamed it up with my pearl earrings that are also from Monica Venator. And then I don't think the dress needs anything else because I love the silhouette of this dress. This is a midi length dress, and I think the fit of this is spot on. This is one of the dresses that I got from the resale boutique here in Atlanta called Labels. I paired up this dress with my slingback heels that I got in London, and I think this outfit just really comes together so beautifully. Now, if you're asking yourself, what time of day does afternoon tea take place? So afternoon tea typically takes place between 3 and 5 p.m. And once again, it can start a little bit earlier, like 2 to 4. And in fact, I believe that the afternoon tea that I have been invited to is going to be starting at 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So the typical time frame for afternoon tea is between 2 and 5 p.m. So if you live in a warmer climate the way that I do, this is why you're going to have to choose appropriately for what you're going to wear, because the reason I chose this particular dress is because it is still quite warm in the afternoon where I live, so I didn't want anything that's going to be too hot, but I will be putting some gloves with this particular dress. Now let's discuss afternoon tea etiquette, and this is something that I was reading up on, and again, when I did afternoon tea at the Ritz-Carlton, I made some mistakes that I do not want to make this time. So when your afternoon tea is poured, and I'm going to use one of my own teacups. So if you're going to stir your tea, I do not take sugar in my tea. I never put a sweetener in my tea because I like the taste of the tea leaves themselves. But in case you are adding a sweetener to your tea, you want to stir it back and forth like this. You want to move your spoon back and forth. You don't want to do this, and you never want to make a noise with your tea like that because that is not proper. You want to just stir your tea back and forth. Move your spoon back and forth in the teacup like so. And that way you're not hearing banging noises like that. That is never appropriate for afternoon tea. So now we know how to stir our tea. Now let's talk about what is served at afternoon tea. So after your tea is served, you may see this three-tiered platter on the top of the table, and afternoon tea normally has three tiers. There is a top tier, which contains the sweets. There's a middle tier, which contains the scones and things like that. And then there's a bottom tier, which contains little finger sandwiches that may be cucumber sandwiches or something like that. So where do we start when we are going to begin with afternoon tea? You never want to reach to the top tier, which is the sweets that are on the very top. You want to start with the sandwiches, which is the savory items, and then you want to work your way up to the top to where the sweets are. So the sweets are going to be the very last thing that you have with afternoon tea. So how should we eat these delicious items that are presented to us with afternoon tea? Now, you might be thinking that you would use a fork and a knife or something like that, but at afternoon tea, it is very appropriate to use your hands. So you just want to remember that you're always going to start with the savory items and you're going to move upwards towards the sweet items, which will be at the very top tier of your afternoon tea platter. So yeah, you can definitely use your hands when you are having an afternoon tea. Now let's talk about one of the most important components of having afternoon tea, and that is how to hold your cup. Now, I want to share with you here in just a minute the mistake that I made when I took my daughter to the Ritz-Carlton and we had afternoon tea. The first thing I want to do is show you how to hold it properly. So when you are holding your teacup, you never want to loop your finger through the teacup like this, which normally most of us think that this is the proper way to hold a teacup, but it definitely isn't. When you are holding your teacup, you want to grip it by the handle and you want to hold it like so. But you never want to loop your fingers in it this way. And let me show you here on the screen when I was having afternoon tea. And if you can see in this photograph that I was holding the teacup improperly. And this is why I bought that book that I got in London, is to make sure that the next time I am going to an afternoon tea that I have the proper etiquette when I am attending. But holding the cup like this is the way that you would hold the cup. Now, when you are having afternoon tea, the cup and the saucer are to remain always on the table unless you are taking a sip from the cup. So if you are standing up and you are having afternoon tea, and I'm going to use one of my own saucers. I don't have my matching saucer with this, but I am going to use this saucer right here. So say, for example, you are standing and you are having afternoon tea. The saucer is to remain in the left hand, and then your teacup is to remain in your right hand. So this is how you would do afternoon tea if you are standing up. And this teacup is a little bit heavier than most of the teacups that you're going to find at an afternoon tea. But basically, you're going to hold your saucer in your left hand and your teacup in your right hand. And when you need to rest it on your platter, you would do it like so. And then if you're taking a drink, once again, do not loop your fingers around the cup, but rather lift it, take a sip, and then you can rest it back on the saucer. Now, one of the other mistakes that I made when I previously attended afternoon tea is, where should we place the napkin when we are away from the table? So the first thing you want to make sure that you're doing when you are having afternoon tea is the napkin should be folded in half and placed in your lap at all times. It should never be laying on the table while you are having tea. The napkin is primarily used to clean your hands, especially since you're going to be using your hands to pick up the sandwiches, or maybe you're going to be getting a scone and spreading some jam on them. And in the event you get a little jam on your fingers or something like that, you can just tuck your hands down underneath the table and wipe it on your napkin. So your napkin is to remain in your lap at all times. You might ask yourself, what shall I do with my napkin if I am going to the powder room? Well, if you're getting up and you're going to the powder room, the napkin should be laid on the chair and not on the table, once again. And you never ever want to just ball it up and lay it on the table where other people are still partaking of afternoon tea. So if you have to get up and go to the powder room, you want to place the napkin neatly in your chair. Now, since we are discussing what to do and where to place napkins at afternoon tea, let's talk about what to do with your napkin once we are finished with afternoon tea. Now, our propensity, I know it is mine sometimes, when I'm at a restaurant or something, I typically just kind of take my napkin like this, and then I just lay it on the table. And this is inappropriate for afternoon tea. So at afternoon tea, once you are finished, you are to place your napkin loosely on the left side of your plate. So you don't have to fold it perfect or anything, but you just want to take it and fold it a little bit and lay it on the left side of your plate. And this lets the host or hostess know that you are complete with afternoon tea. So don't never ever ball it up like this and lay it up on the table or something like that. That is very inappropriate for afternoon tea. And I know that we do have this propensity when we go to a restaurant. It's just something that I think most of us are used to, especially if you do not go to restaurants that have cloth or linen napkins. We are used to just crumbling up the napkin and laying it on the table. Now, the last tip I wanted to talk about with regard to doing afternoon tea properly, it is one of the most important, other than how you hold your cup. What conversations should we have at afternoon tea? When we are attending an afternoon tea, our conversations should be kept light and pleasant. You want to make sure that you avoid any topics that are controversial, like politics, religion, money. You never want to address controversial topics at an afternoon tea. Remember, one thing about afternoon tea that has been carried on throughout the centuries, especially in British culture, afternoon tea is a way to connect with those people that you want to connect with. It is to do a catch up with them, to maybe become closer with those people that are around you at afternoon tea. So you never want to bring up topics that are controversial. And let me give you an example of something that is a light topic to discuss, which would be a book that you've read, something that you found was very interesting, as long as it's not a book about politics, but something that you found very interesting. You also can talk about places that you've traveled to and what you enjoyed about your trip, the foods you ate, and so on and so forth. So we want to keep our topics at afternoon tea light and pleasant. Okay, ladies, so that is all I have to share with you ladies in today's video. Let me know if this was helpful to you. And once again, please let me know what color of handbag and also the style of handbag you would pair with this particular dress that I'm going to wear to my afternoon tea. I would really appreciate your help. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And once again, if you are just landing on my channel for the very first time, my name is Teresa, and this channel is all about leveling up and becoming more elegant and more graceful. And if you're interested in that, please go ahead, subscribe to the channel, and join our community of women that are becoming more elegant and more graceful. And once again, thanks for watching, ladies, and I will see you in my next video.